And in the aftermath of conquest is when the challenges for a ruler truly begin, and for the Lich Lord Mannimarco, victory was a preamble to the tedious work of governance. And even as his legions were engaged on the war front, a conflict he viewed with a detached confidence, his immediate attention was drawn inward to the imperfect machinations of his own household and the deeply flawed components of his own ambitions. He was a being of immense power, but he was plagued by the most mortal of problems, and his son Astor was a drunkard. Very disappointing. Your brother shows promise. He applies himself. You, however, have embraced the bottle with more enthusiasm than you have ever shown for your duties, and you have become a drunkard, and as such you will receive no further titles of significance from me, and this is your lot. The territory of Meron Pass is yours. Do not mismanage it. And this was a final settlement, in a strategic placement of a faulty asset where it could do the least harm, or so he thought. Mannimarco viewed his son as an inefficient component in his grand machine, his blossoming empire. In dealing with this domestic irritation, he was able to reshift his focus back to the war effort against the Iron Orcs who sought to press down upon his land. Their knights are formidable, yes, I've heard the reports. They are clad in steel and filled with courage. How quaint. But they can be killed, and my legions are immortal. My armies are squishy, yes, but we are numerous. They are disposable and endless. And why would I waste a finely crafted dagger on an iron orc when I can have a tidal wave of shadow bones sent to achieve the same result? And I will summon more. We have infinite men. And my levies will only grow. I will summon more undead if I need to make this war work. And we will drown them in a tide of bone. It is only simple matter for me. Mannimarco's strategy was that of using his overwhelming levies to fight off against even the highest of quality of troops, and the Iron Orcs could only bear against a middling amongst the elite. And I think this strategy would work, just sending enough tide to wall them down, because even if one orc could take 100, could they even take 500? No, they would surely fall. And of course, Mannimarco's confidence was absolute. However, his focus was pulled once again back to the domestic troubles at home, and a frantic report would arrive from the front, and it would have nothing to do with the Iron Orcs. My lord, I deliver a report. It is Meron Pass. It is your son. Do not waste time with these trivialities. What has that drunkard done now? The reinforcements, my lord. The new legions of just cause you've ordered to the front, the route through Meron Pass. Your son and his drunken carelessness has failed to secure the supply depots, and he uses the resources meant for the armies for a week-long feast, and the just cause have been stalled and their supplies plundered. The forces has been advanced. He has blundered, my lord. A drunkard and a fool. And he wastes our vital resources on self-pity, and in doing so has created a nightmare for this war he is too pathetic to partake in. Rectify his mistake and send the just cause the long way around, and send my son the bill. This inconvenience will change nothing in the battle. And for the Lich Lord, these were matters of high frustration to his reign. He could command many legions of undead with obedience, but he could not command competence from that of his own son. But even with these infuriating setbacks, it of course had a fondness for irony in these moments, as he would soon later execute many schemes. Capture mighty warriors for his flocks, and he would eventually bring them into the fold. And as he captured them, the long-term play, of course, was his very special rituals. As they would fall, he would have new Lich Lord Knights to hold true. And soon the battle would commence with the Iron Orcs. And the news would come swiftly. The tides of the battle were unknowingly, and one could only hope for the best. So Mannimarco would establish and set up teams from the front, and set up the best he could to give himself every advantage that he needed. And of course, the news would come soon from the battle, as a messenger would come into the throne room and would kneel and bring the good news. My lord, a decisive victory! The enemy, they have blundered. In their arrogance, their army ended up running right into our defensive position in the hills. And we couldn't have asked for a better scenario. We have crushed them, and we have captured their leader. In a victory born of the foolishness of the Iron Orcs, the enemy's incompetence had managed to exceed that of his own son, and now handed Mannimarco a win through his brute force strategy. And that he captured the leader, a mighty, powerful warrior. He was brought to the Lich Lord still dazed. I could harvest your soul, a being of your power. No, you could barely even fuel my magical reserves. It is unnecessary for us. And here is when Mannimarco's true nature would come to the front. He was still in debt from the constant warmongery, and a soul would be a strong prize and a trophy, but the gold was needed, and he would just do what is necessary. Rather, I will end this war and get my gold. You cannot even afford the 100 for your ransom, but your treasury and your defeat will give me everything I need, and I will take your lands, and your ransom will solve my problems for now. We will pursue a more profitable and a more elegant outcome. And here Mannimarco would successfully expand along a prodding, polluting process of expanding his lands, and he would further solidify his power base through overwhelming force. For the King of Worms, every solution simply would reveal a new set of problems. And those infuriating problems, however, were often found within his own house. In the wake of his conquest, one must not forget about court life. The Lich Lord Mannimarco's court was a complex and dangerous place. A court of shadows and whispers where loyalty was a commodity and betrayal a constant occurrence. And it was here, amidst the spoils of war, that Mannimarco's reign would face very intimate challenges. He had taken on new retainers to bolster his power, and among them, a genius high elf woman of sharp intellect and arcane talent who had quickly become his new mistress. But with new faces came new dangers, and the King of Worms knew that vigilance was the eternal price of power. In his network of spies, he would soon discover a dark truth: that someone is trying to kill me. And the reports would confirm that brewing within his own fortress, there will be a conspiracy aimed at the Lich Lord. But for Mannimarco, this was not a cause for fear, but for the cold analytical fury. And it was that a desolation, a desecration within his home that needed to be corrected, a thread that needed to be snipped, and he did not care about the why, he only cared about the who. And he would launch numerous investigations, and he bypassed the conspirators' focus on the weak link. He would focus in on the tools and narrow his way down until he would find the conspirator. And his investigations and wards would eventually hone in on a specific individual. And the trail would not lead to his new mistress. Oh no, she was undoubtedly loyal. But to a different woman entirely. And it would be a fierce Nord warrior that he had taken into his service. A woman whose loyalty, it seemed, was a lie. She was the chosen assassin, and Mannimarco, in his grand plan, would summon her to his throne room, laying a trap easily with his redoubled guards. And eventually the Nord woman would come to stand before Mannimarco, her hand resting on her sword hilt. You summoned me, Worm King? What is it that you need? I am told you have ambitious fury, that you seek to elevate your station. I was going to let you live, perhaps even reward your ferocity. But then I found that you are plotting on me. And I will not play games when it comes to my existence. You will not make a machination of the Worm King. And your things, death would be but a release for you. No, you will serve me. And your punishment will be in eternity. As a perfect, unwilling thrall. And you will not live anymore. Not in this realm. And of course, with a quick gesture, Mannimarco would twist the very life force within the woman. And she would scream and launch a horrifying, soul-wrenching sound as her body would be warped and her skin would be torn from her flesh. And she would rise again as an intelligent thrall, but would still retain the same prowess as before. But now he needed not worry of her as a threat. And while Mannimarco was busy rooting out traitors, his gaze would occasionally drift to the lands beyond. To the east and to the north, the scattered remnants of the orcs that he had previously conquered would eventually band together and form a small confederacy. And his generals warned Mannimarco that they could one day become a cantankerous threat. They may form a confederacy, how quaint, but they are only a minor triviality. We have beaten them back so much that it is the only way that they can delay the inevitable. And I will leave them be for now. Let them fester against the end. There are more pressing matters to attend to. And the most pressing matter would be his potential expansion, but he would have to encounter with the profane power that was lurking within his being. And the gift that he accepted from Clavica's vial would come with a terrible cost. And it was the Thume, but a twisted Daedric version that was not fed on discipline, but on raw negative emotions. And the angrier he would become, the more powerful and the more unstable it would grow. And it was on a day in the Mannimarco's Great Hall, there would be a pretty tedious dispute. Vassals droning on, courtiers sitting at the table, a constant arguments. But the most highest pressure of them all weighing on Mannimarco was arguments over who would get the last sweet roll. It was a trivial matter, of course, but it would stoke the fires to his frustrations, and he would eventually snap. I've had enough of this incessant whining, and as he spoke, at his final words, a wave of uncontrolled power would erupt. The unstable Thume would distort the very air, and the members of his court would be thrown to the gourd and to the ground. And the blast, indiscriminate, was a catastrophic release of his rage, and when the dust settled, the halls were in ruins, and several of his courtiers and guards would lie injured, and worse, his own family would be caught in the blast, their bodies wounded and broken by his uncontrollable power. It was in this moment, as he seized the devastation, he would have a grim understanding of the weapon that he had claimed from a Daedric prince. The power that Clavicus Vile gave him was that of a beast, and his rage was its leash, and to truly master it, to wield it as a weapon, he would have to master himself. He would have to be calmer and colder, so as not to arouse the beast within, and he would quickly move to attend his court. I will mend these wounds. I must protect my progeny at all cost. And now Mannimarco would look at the destruction he wrought as he would heal his sons. But even the dangerous enemies within, the greatest enemy to him was himself. And he could only hope to master the beast within. For the Lich Lord, victory was not a destination, it was a waypoint on the journey to absolute power. And his conquest of the East was complete for now, and he would push south. His armies would wipe the enemy forces from the field, and now he would stand, an undisputed master of the expanded realm of Hammerfell. And his first act would not be to rest, but to be ruthless in his own consolidation. And he would distribute the spoils of war amongst his family and his most loyalist of vassals. And he would do it with a cold pragmatism, as he would carve the continent into pieces. These temple holdings are a drain on our resources. They are useless to me. We will grant them to new, loyal vassals and get more control. This land shall go to my firstborn. He would carve up the lands and strategically placed his dynasty so that they would be well built to rule the realm he intended to create and manage. And his gaze would shift across the map towards the heart of Tamriel. The white gold tower. These, Sancrator, these are the true prizes. And every land we conquer, every duchy we take, we will inch closer to these sacred sites. Mannimarco's long-term ambition was godhood, and these holy sites would be the key to his exaltation. But his grand strategy would be interrupted by many mortal affairs, and even in victory he would be beset by threats. My undying lord, a plot has been discovered, an attempt on the life of your wife. That is unsurprising, and it will fail. My power is absolute, and see to it that the guards are doubled. Mannimarco would dismiss threats with casual arrogance, as he had long transcended the fear of nominal assassins. But as one threat was dismissed, others would erupt, and more towards on the northern border. And my lord, there was a declaration of war. The three northern lords have united, and they seek to march on your dragon star. The Nords wish to take. It was expected in this game that the power, of course, was not in a vacuum, and his domination would force the houses of the North to band together. But of course, these wars would be no different. It would just be a test for his empire. My magic has not recovered, and my treasury is still budding. I guess we will go back to the dungeons. And he would turn his attention once more to a reliable resource. He would marshal souls and harvest corpses, and even in one instance in the not-so-long future, he would take a captured orc and would bring him. He was a notable Republican merchant, and he would look down on this goblin orc. I'm surprised you cannot even afford your way out, and you are not any of use to me alive, and I must harvest your soul. And of course, in the throne room he would devour many. And as he prepared to meet the eventual Northern Coalition, he would no longer be a beleaguered lord. He would be a mighty king, a dominating force that would crush any who would dare to step into his lands. And he would fight one war and then the next and then the next. And his ambition would be boundless, and his methods would be brutal. And as the King of Worms would carve out his empire in Tamriel, his profane acts and growing power would not go unnoticed. For every victory and every soul and every blasphemous ritual would send ripples across the fabrics of existence, and they would travel far beyond the shores of mainland Tamriel. They would pass deep into an impossibly beautiful island, bathed in a light that is neither day or night, the realm of Artaeum. And within the towers, we would see a council of robed figures, hidden deep within the shadows as they gather around the pool, the Sigic Order. And they would look upon Tamriel, and they would see the calm image of the Lich Lord on his throne. And the robed figure would raise his hand and the image would ripple. He grows too strong. The balance is threatened, and the monster we exiled has become a king. A king can be unmade. It is time we reminded our wayward student that there are powers in this world far older and far less forgiving than his worm god.